Hello YouTube! Today we're going to be going over a brief overview of the Two Knights Defense. I'm not going to be going into deep theoretical lines. I'll try to do that in some later video where we cover a little bit more. Today I'm just going to show you kind of what the options are and what people have done in the past and what the main lines are. So basically the Two Knights Defense is after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then after the move bishop to c4, knight f6. This begins the Two Knights Defense. So basically there are three moves that get tried here on any level, whether it's the Grandmaster level or the club level. You have the move knight g5, which is by far and away the most popular move on the club level. You have the move d3, which right now is the most popular move on the Grandmaster level. And you have the move d4. I like to put it this way. You have three basic options in this position. You can choose to win a pawn basically by force with the move knight g5. And of course there's other ways black can play it. The line is very complex. Like I said, I'm not getting into a deep detailed theory right now. But basically knight g5 is, at least on the Master and Grandmaster level, it practically wins a pawn by force. The moves d4 are choosing to play something similar to a Scotch pawn structure, or a Scotch formation pawn structure. It's not the Scotch, it's still Two Knights Defense. This is a version of the Italian game, but it's the Scotch pawn structure. And the move d3 chooses to play more of a Ruy Lopez type pawn structure. So what I want to talk about here just a little bit is just the basic plans. So the main line after, say for example, knight g5, and like I said, there's multiple moves that can be played. We're not going to go into huge detail about alternatives like the move knight to e4 or bishop c5, which lead to extremely complex positions. But for now, they think that those complex positions favor white. One short example is after, say, bishop to c5. The easiest way that white can handle this is not with the craziness that happens after knight f7, bishop f2, but probably the easiest way for white to just get some type of advantage is just to move like, say, bishop f7 and then bishop d5. And this is part of the reason that nobody really tries this, at least on the Grandmaster level. Okay, so all the crazy moves aside that you can play after knight g5, the absolute main line is just simply the move d5. Okay, after the move d5, the main line is the move e takes d5. And now there's four moves that get played here. There's knight takes d5, which leads to the famed fried liver attack after knight takes d5, and this is why this is a favorite among amateurs. Because after the move knight takes d5, you get to play this really cool sacrifice, knight f7, king f7, queen f3, and then this king has to come out into the middle and then knight c3, and white gets a huge attack for the material. This position is still considered unclear, but at least on the amateur level, this almost always wins for white, and white gets to play this an awful lot on the amateur level, on the club level, and especially on the kid level. So that's why this is super popular on that level. However, most grandmasters don't like to venture into these forests. So after e takes d5, I would say by far and away the most common move on the grandmaster level, although these two options, knight d4 and b5, are also legitimate tries, the most common move on the grandmaster level is the move knight to a5. And after knight a5, although again there's two moves here, there's the moves d3 and bishop b5, the most common reply here is just simply bishop b5. And then, after the move, bishop b5 checks, c6, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, we again have multiple ways that we can try to hold on to our pawn at this point. We can bring the bishop back to d3, just focusing on holding the e4 square. We can bring our queen to e3, focusing on holding the e4 square. Or we can play the line that was the main line for the longest time, which is just simply bishop e2. And at this point, it's just basically white just trying to hold on to his pawn, and black has a lot of play for that pawn. Black has a lot of play and a lot of space, and it just kind of levels out. They think that white might be a little bit better here, but maybe nothing more than that. Okay, so that is knight g5 in a nutshell. So let's go and let's look at the other options that grandmasters are trying after the beginning of the Two Knights Defense. So we have knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6. We have these other two tries. We have d3 and we have d4. So let's take a look at the move pawn to d4. So pawn d4, at least on the Grandmaster level, is leading usually to a Scotch pawn formation. Now, there is more than one way to play this particular variation. After e takes d4, you can go into crazy gambits with castles and a4, and then you have two options. You have the weird, you have the main line, which is rook e1, and then you have some weird gambit lines that you can try involving the move knight to c3, which starts I don't know how to say it. I think it's like the Nakamskin Gambit or something like this. But this gets really crazy, and there's multiple ways for black to equalize in that line. That's all you have to know, that black can actually equalize in that line. And actually, there's one line where black is probably objectively better, although it's very complex. So again, we've got a lot of crazy complexities here, which is again why stuff like this is kind of a club level favorite, because they get to play these wacky, complicated positions where they have all kinds of tactics. So the main line after bishop d4, at least on the master and grandmaster level, is just e captures d4, e5, and then they just kind of play this pawn structure. After e captures d4, e5, they play the move d5, counterattacking the bishop. And then the old way that they used to do this back in the day is they used to play this thing called the Max Lang attack, and that involved taking on f6 and allowing taking on c4. And you can certainly play that way. That's an old-fashioned way of playing the position. The new main line is just kind of to create this pin, and then you're just going to play something very similar to a Scotch, where you play knight takes d4. And the only thing I really remember about this theory is that one of the maneuvers that you play in this is you kind of two-step against the knight at some point. You castle first, but then you two-step against the knight. What you do is you play f3 and then you play f4, like you gain that tempo. And I just remember that that's a really critical tempo. So that, like, after, say, you play something like, bishop to d7 or, whatever they try, you end up taking, and then you castle. And then this is the depth of my theoretical knowledge, which is pretty slim here, is you just kind of two-step this knight, and you do that to just gain this space. And then at this point, the theory kind of starts for the opening, but White's development is at least already decided, so we've got that kind of going for us. But this position is considered approximately level with good play for both sides. Okay, so now we'll go into the most popular move today, or at least the most popular move on the absolute tippy-top Grandmaster level. After knight f6, the most popular move on the Grandmaster level is the move d3. And a lot of arrows just showed up on the board. I put those in earlier today. So I do apologize for all these arrows. But what I'm trying to show you is the basic plan for the Ruy Lopez. And that's why this is a very popular move today. And so I'm going to move my cursor around so I can show you why some of these arrows are pointing to these squares. So the basic plan for development is we play a move like c3. We can also play a move like a3 or a4 so that our bishop can retreat back to a2. But oftentimes we'll play c3 and our bishop will retreat back to b3 and our bishop can retreat back to c2. And then depending, we might develop our knight to c3, or we might develop our knight to d2, f1, and then g3, f5, or d2, f1, e3, and then d5, depending on what goes on in the center of the board. And this is a very typical plan in the Ruy Lopez. And then another very typical thing is the Ruy Lopez is after we castle, we're going to play a move like h3 to hold our knight, and then secure our pawn duo in the middle. And of course the moves c3 and d4 to get that pawn duo in the middle. So I know that was a lot of arrows, but that's basically the plan. So we're going to take a look at one Grandmaster example in this game, just so you can kind of get a feel for it. Is after the move d3, we're going to have black play the move. Well, we can play bishop e7. There's a ton of moves here. There's bishop e7. There's h6. There's d5. There's all kinds of stuff. But I'm just going to follow this one game, and it's a pretty simple game. It was a Kasparov game, actually. So Kasparov actually did play this position with White. So if you need somebody to endorse this position, Kasparov has done this. So it should be okay, right? I mean, he was a good player, right? Okay, so that game went bishop c5, and then c3. And actually, also Magnus Carlsen has played this position. I'm just looking at my notes. I got a Carlsen game in here. I've got all kinds of top level players have played this, even recently. So wow, this is pretty popular. Just playing for this Ruy Lopez structure right now. This has got to be the super main line today. So then d6. This is following my Kasparov game, and then he just played bishop b3, and then we had bishop e6, bishop c2, and he's just going to play this kind of like a Ruy Lopez. d4 hitting the middle, and then Kasparov brought his rook to e1, and then just developed his knight to c3. And notice in this game, Kasparov didn't really waste time with h3. But of course, in this game, his opponent also decided to develop his bishop to e6, so he didn't have to waste time with it. And notice that h3 is usually a move that you play to secure your pawn duo when there's a threat of bishop g4, and in this case, there was never really a huge threat of bishop g4. So rook d8, bishop g5, Kasparov gets a pin, h6. You never want to give Kasparov a pin. He's really scary when he gets pins. Knight d5, hitting the queen and knight. He had to take that knight. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and yeah, that's what Kasparov does, I guess. That's a double attack. I mean, it feels kind of silly that this happened, but this is what Kasparov did to people. He did stuff like this, just double attacks. How easy is that? So queen d7, pawn takes pawn, hitting the queen. I guess that's what the guy missed. This is queen takes c6, and then he took on f6, took on f6. We've got a really messed up kingside, and we're down a pawn against the greatest player that ever lived. So the game didn't last much longer. Queen d3, threatening mate. f5, queen takes f5, re-threatening mate. Rook fe8, queen h7, king f8, and yeah, he got it. He still got mate. So that was Kasparov versus G. Reynolds in Lisbon, 1999. That was that game. So there, now you have a stem game for the d3 variation. So basically, we'll just go back to our three little arrows here back at the beginning, where we have knight c6, bishop to c4, knight f6, and then right here you've got basically, in this position, you've got your three basic moves. You've got knight g5, d3, or d4. And those are your choices to pick from. And I hope you learned what your options are in the two knights defense, and I hope you learned a little bit from this video. Thank you very much for watching.